everyone, it's Angela Allen from the Handmade Homestead and Garden, and this is video number 2 for week 2 in the Every Bit Counts Challenge. I want to apologize for being a couple of days late. I like to do this challenge on Wednesdays since the month started on a Wednesday. I'm doing every 7 days. But my phone died a couple of days ago and it's taken a couple of days to get everything back together. But I have my footage for the projects that I've done, and I have this snazzy new phone that I'm very happy with, and I am going to get this one out. So again, we're going to do 8 projects. I always like to do that extra. And truthfully, like most of you, I do several projects a day this time of year that are put away for winter time, fall, early spring. So here are 8 new projects. Hopefully they're not a lot of repeats, but you grow what you grow in the garden and you have to preserve what you have on hand. So I'll try not to spend too much time on green beans and Swiss chard. You can see that one of the projects I'll be doing today are tomatoes. Tomatoes, cherry tomatoes specifically. If you have any great recipes for cherry tomatoes, please put them down below because I am in need of more. I've roasted them, I've fermented them, I've frozen them, I've cooked with them. We eat a lot of them fresh, and as you can see, I'm sure I have still more out there to pick. I don't know about all of you, but this time of year I start to feel some of the burden of the abundance of what's coming out of the garden. If that's you too, leave me a comment down below. I end up with all kinds of produce and all kinds of things to can, and I am canning and preserving and dehydrating and freezing and eating fresh and pickling and fermenting, and I still have a lot, almost a landslide like these tomatoes, to deal with every single day. And it can start to feel frustrating, start to feel a little bit overwhelming. Now don't get me wrong, I am very, very grateful for the food that we produce, and I do love to share it with friends and relatives and local food pantries and people in need as well. But it's still a lot to do, and it takes a lot of time, and I go to bed really tired every night, and I'm betting that most of you do as well. All right, so let's get going. I've got 8 projects on tap. I'm going to run through the projects quickly. I'm not going to give you a lot of recipes because there are tons of recipes online, and some of the stuff I'm really just processing for the freezer or pickling or dehydrating, that kind of things. All right. Let's go. I'm going to switch to overdubbing my voice in here because I do have a lot of projects to get through. The kitchen is very noisy, and I think this will allow for a more consistent sound for you. And of course, we are going to start with tomatoes. So we're going to sort through these and remove all of the green stems and all of the overripe tomatoes. I need these to be ripe, but I need them to be firm to hold up because we're going to can whole cherry tomatoes. It's perfectly safe to water bath can whole cherry tomatoes with the skin on because we are going to add some additional acid in the form of lemon juice. You could use vinegar if you wanted. I prefer the flavor of lemon juice. One by one, you're going to poke 4 or 5 holes in each tomato. That will allow the acidified water and the flavor of the herbs that we're going to add into the tomato so that they have great flavor, and it will help keep them whole as long as you don't over poke them. Just 3 or 4 or 5 holes is fine. You really don't want to put a bunch more than that. You'll just end up with mush in the jar. I like to use a variety of tomatoes. These are Sun Gold, which are super sweet. I also have Midnight Snackers, which are a little bit more meaty and have more of a smoky flavor from the anthocyanins that are in them. And I'm also going to use some large red cherries. So there'll be a variety and they'll look really pretty. Now to each jar, these are 1/2 pint jars, I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. If you were doing quarts, of course, you'd need to add 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. That's just going to go right in the bottom of each jar. Now at this point, you can add any herbs or spices that you want to add. I'm going to add some lemon pepper. It does have a little bit of salt. It does have a little bit of garlic in it. I do make my own lemon pepper, so it does have a lot of lemon zest as well, which will impart a lot of flavor. And again, I'm using lemon juice. You could use vinegar if you chose to, but I prefer the lemon flavor. And then I'm going to add a bunch of herbs, oregano, thyme. I'm going to add fresh basil. It's fresh oregano too. That's all coming right from my green stalks outside my kitchen door. But you can add whatever flavors you want. These are chips of dehydrated garlic. I'm going to add just a couple of chips to each one. Remember that it's a small jar. I don't want to overwhelm the flavors. Another herb I like to add is dehydrated carrot tops. They do give a very slight carroty flavor, and it also looks super pretty in the jar. The carrot tops keep their very green color, and they look almost like fresh parsley, so I love the look of them in there too. So I'm going to put that in, but again, you're going to put in whatever flavors speak to you. I am doing these very Italian flavored. My intention is to use them on focaccia bread or in pasta sauce, that kind of thing, or even with cream cheese for crackers, for company or entertaining. How you're going to use these when they're done is you're going to strain them out, mix them with a little bit of olive oil, or strain them out and mix them with some cream cheese to be able to make a spread with them, or you can just drain them and toss them across the top of your pizza before you bake it. There's so many uses. If you're using it for pasta, of course, you would just dump the whole thing. You could dump the whole thing in the pasta sauce actually and use the liquid as well, or you could just strain out the liquid. Though there is lemon juice and in my case lemon zest as well, they will not taste overly lemon flavored. This is a great way to use cherry tomatoes. It's quick and easy once you get all those holes poked in there. Just remember to pack the tomatoes down firmly so that you don't have a lot of empty space at the bottom. And after they're processed and you're sure they're sealed, don't shake the jars over much. Be very gentle in the handling of them, just because you don't want to squish them. They're going to be very soft. And because these are Italian style, I'm putting a couple of nice big fresh basil leaves in there whole. I'm going to lay them right up against the sides of the glass. They'll still look very pretty even after this is processed. You'll see at the end. And these are delicious. Pantry staple in our house. We love them, and I think that you'll love them too. You should give them a try. They're super easy. You're going to water bath can these jars for about 15 minutes, but please do look up a recipe and follow a recipe that you feel comfortable with, especially if you're a new canner. Make sure you follow a recipe just until you're comfortable and you know the rope. Rebel canning is really for people who already have experience. So there we are, 7 jars ready for the pantry. Okay, on to the next one. So here we are again. We are going to do another batch of canned cherry tomatoes, but this is going to be a Mexican flavored cherry tomato. So in the bottom of these jars, I've put cumin, I've put a little bit of smoked paprika, I've put some chili powder, and a couple of small chunks of jalapeno peppers that I grew in our garden. I'm going to add the variety of cherry tomatoes, again, processed just like the first batch, holes poked in them, and I'm going to add some handfuls of fresh cilantro leaves and again some more fresh carrot tops that have been diced up very finely. And these also already have a tablespoon of lemon juice added to the bottom. We're going to get these nice and filled up. We're going to make sure that the cherry tomatoes are packed down firmly, just so the jars look more filled. As you can see in the background on the right, there's a jar from my previous batch earlier in the day of the Italian style cherry tomatoes. And that one I didn't pack down firmly enough, or I shook it too much after I checked the seals, and it definitely has a little bit of a gap at the bottom. Those tomatoes are way up at the top under the lid. They will settle back down over time. But yeah, don't worry about pushing them down a little bit. You don't want to squish the tomatoes or break them if you can help it, but it definitely helps to really pack those jars full. And of course, you're going to give them a little shake or debubble too before you put their caps on. Always wipe your rims, put your caps on. But these all sealed. I used 4 jars lids, which are always reliable, and they are going to be delicious too. I do always use filtered water when I'm canning, but if your tap water tastes fine to you and doesn't have any off flavors, it's perfectly fine to be canning with that yourselves. And always, always use canning salt. These do all have a half of a teaspoon of salt in them. The first batch did, but they also had lemon pepper that had a little salt in it too. But that's also part of the recipe. So again, just in case I forget something here, make sure you follow an approved recipe for canning, no matter what you're canning, unless you're an experienced canner and then you already know all of this stuff. It's always best to be safe. I've got those rims cleaned off now, and I'm just gonna put the lids on and get them right into the water bath canner to process. Now this was interesting. I noticed that the water was really dirty and one of the jars looks a little bit shorter, so I was positive that that was broken on the bottom, but there were no broken jars. Apparently one of my lids wasn't quite tight enough, and it did siphon back some of the liquid into the canner, and one of them wasn't sealed for this batch. But that's okay. To be honest, I just cleaned it up, and then the next time I water bath something a little bit later that day, I just put it in and re-water bath canned it, and I will use that one first, but it did seal the second time. But yeah, my water got a little bit dirty from probably from the chili powder and paprika that was in it. These are going to be great over the winter in chili and soup, and even if you drain out the liquid, putting it on pizza or in burritos or wraps, or right in your bean mixture too, if you're doing green burritos or something like that as well. Really good in casseroles too. Yes, they do have the skin on them, but the skin is well cooked at this point. It's really not that much of a problem. It does lend a lot more flavor to the finished product. On to the next recipe. I am going to be making lemony caponata spread. This is a double batch that I am going to do, but the recipe can be found in the Ball Book of Home Preserving and Canning, the great big one. Just so you know, I do get a small commission if you make a purchase through there. It does not affect the price that you pay at all, and those small commissions do help keep this channel running. And we're always grateful for those kind of purchases. Caponata is something that we make weekly in this household anyway. I am a Sicilian Italian culturally, so it is something that I almost always have in the refrigerator. And I do make it fresh a lot of the time. But in the winter, when I don't have those fresh, really delicious tomatoes from the garden or all of that eggplant and homegrown peppers, It's really not the same when you make it with store-bought peppers and store-bought tomatoes. So I like to have some on the shelf, and this is a delicious recipe, and it's easy to make, but it does take a long time. Mainly because after you put it together, you're going to cook it down. So one single recipe takes 2 pounds of tomatoes, 2 large peppers, 6 cups of chopped eggplant, lemon juice, of course, a half a cup per batch, and lots of different herbs and spices too. Salt and pepper, of course, and garlic. Capers and green olives. Those are all in this recipe. Again, if you're a new canner, follow the recipe very closely. I'm not going to go over all of those steps in this video for you because it's just safer if you do it one step at a time looking at the recipe. We're going to start by dicing everything up. Those are onions. I substituted some green onions just because I don't eat a lot of regular white onions myself. But you're going to dice up all of your ingredients, put them in a really big, heavy pot, and you're going to put them on the stove and bring them to a boil slowly. You don't want to burn them on the bottom. I love this heavy pot for that reason. This is the Dutch oven I cook my bread in, so the outside of it always looks like it's been through a disaster, but the inside is spotlessly clean, I promise. And I don't care if the outside is stained. I use what's in my kitchen, and this is a well-loved, well-used piece of equipment for me. As you can see, I have a variety of peppers from the garden. There's pippins and shishito and banana peppers and cubanelles, and let's see, there's one jalapeno in there, but don't be put off by that. It's a jalapeno. It's not hot. I'm going to dice those all up until I get the equivalent of 2 peppers worth, which is about a cup of diced peppers, and everything's going to go right in that same pan to get cooked down. And it goes without saying, I always wash my hands between steps. I keep my cutting board, my knives, everything very clean. And after cleaning these peppers, for example, I wash them really well before proceeding. I was a nurse for 42 years. I'm really careful about cleanliness. I don't talk about that in every video. I guess I just think it goes without saying, but I just want to say that so everybody knows. I'm actually cutting these with a pair of kitchen scissors. I use those only in the kitchen for food, and it makes quick work of peppers. It's a whole lot easier to try to slice them all up. Anything thin like that you can cut with scissors, chives, that kind of thing. I use scissors every time. And of course, I keep adding to that pot. So let's get some of these eggplant cut up and ready for the pot too. Now, my eggplant harvests have not been as great as my tomato harvests, but they've been really, really prolific. I have several more out there that will be ready in just a few days, and it's my intention to do 3, 4, maybe even 5 more batches of caponata to get us through the fall, winter, and into the spring season, just to have it ready and on the shelves. Caponata has so many uses. And in a Sicilian household, it's kept in the refrigerator at all times. It's sweet, it's tangy, it's delicious spread on a piece of bread. You can mix it into pasta. You can put it on a big block of cream cheese and eat it with crackers as an hors d'oeuvre. Or if I'm in the mood, I will just scoop it onto the side of my plate and eat it as a vegetable side with meat and a starch. So there's so many uses for it, and it's so delicious, and it lasts so well in the refrigerator. It does have a little bit of honey in it, and it does have, again, vinegar, or in this case, lemon juice, to keep it fresh longer. It's a delicious use of eggplant, and eggplant doesn't fare super well when you freeze it. So I am really, really happy to make extra batches of this when I'm able to. You can see how full my pan is getting, and I am not done yet. We're gonna give this a mix because I want to make sure that nothing scorches at the bottom. I did not add any extra water. I did put chopped up tomatoes at the bottom, and they're definitely letting out some water. And this will cook down, as I said, and there will be a lot of water in this pot, and then you're going to let it cook for, it says, I think an hour or 45 minutes in the recipe, but I had to cook it for at least an hour and a half. And then at the end, you're going to add the lemon juice and the honey to the mixture, and then cook that down even a little bit longer because you want this really thick. These water bath can at a full rolling boil for 35 minutes for a half pint, but these jars are twice that big. They are full pints. So I did water bath can them for 45 minutes. They all sealed, every one of them, and they came out perfectly. And I cannot wait to make more for my shelves. So it turns out I had about 20 pounds of extra tomatoes left over. I washed and cored them and put all of them into freezer bags and straight into the freezer. I do this every single year. In another few weeks, when I have time, I will pull them all out and put them in a roaster, and I will make tomato juice and tomato sauce, tomato jam, and pizza sauce for my pantry shelves. So I've made a big container of traditional brine. This is the zesty zucchini relish recipe you can find in the Ball Canning book, the big book. Again, the link for that, you can find it down under my Amazon shop in books. It's our favorite. I don't make it every year. I usually make a dozen or more half pints, maybe 12 or 14. I think I made 14 this day. And I will use that for 2 years. It usually takes about 2 years for me to go through that much of it, but who knows? You know, it varies every year. I like to have extra on the shelf. It has a lot of great uses. You can see me struggling to get the lid off the colander, but this is one of those 2-day processes where you shred the peppers, the onions, and the zucchini the day before, or at least 12 hours before. Mix them with salt, let them brine overnight, and then the next day or at the end of your waiting period, you squeeze out the excess liquid. In my case, I weighed it. I put it right in the kitchen sink, clean sink, but in a pan still. Weight the lid down with maybe a plate and a heavy cast iron pan, and give it an hour or two to make sure it's nice and dry. I like a really nice thick relish, and this recipe is zesty and sweet, and it is the perfect hot dog relish kind of relish. It's not dill flavored. It's definitely a sweet pickle flavor, and it lasts beautifully on the shelves. I pack it very firmly. As you can see, I'm using the same pounder that I would use to pack sauerkraut. Now, I don't pack it quite that hard, but I do pack it down firmly. And then when I add the brine, I definitely debubble this with a chopstick because it's got to get the brine in there with all those vegetables. I am raw packing this. I think the recipe may call for cooking the vegetables in the brine first. I don't do that because I don't want the relish. You know, zucchini that's overcooked is mush. So I don't want the relish to become mushy. I do raw pack it. But you should follow the instructions on the recipe and do what you're comfortable with. I make sure that I do debubble it, and I make sure that I clean these rims very, very well. Out of, I think, 14 of them, 2 of them didn't seal. I did take those lids off, re-clean the lip of the jar, reapply the lid, and re-process them, and they did perfectly fine with that, and they did seal the second time. So follow the instructions and do what you feel is best for your family. This works for mine. It's always delicious, and I have relish that's 2 years old now. I'm down to, I think, 2 left, and I made this last in 2022. And it's still perfectly delicious, perfectly usable, and it is not mushy at all. And because I do pack them very firmly And I think the recipe even says to stuff them in the jar. You can see I don't have a lot of space at the bottom. And once those are cooled down, that relish will go all the way down to the bottom and there'll be no gap at all. So that's just the perfect situation for me. While those jars cool, let's head out to the garden and grab some more produce to put away for the Every Bit Counts challenge. We have 5 down and at least 4 more to go for this video. If you find this content helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps so much with the algorithm and for our channel's growth. And please, please comment. I love to hear your comments and your suggestions and your experiences. So we're going to start with Swiss chard. It is our favorite green. So we do grow a lot of it. I grow it in probably 4 different places in my gardens, and we eat it very often fresh and in salad and cooked, but I love to have a lot of it put away. I am going to use a salad spinner this time because I do have a lot to do, and I did have a subscriber comment that I should get a salad spinner. I want y'all to know I do have one and I do use it often, and I do love using it. So I've cut this in pretty wide shreds, maybe about 1 inch wide. I've taken all of the stems off of it. Those I'm going to preserve in another way, and you'll see that in a minute. But we're going to get this laid out on a towel, let it air dry some more so that I can pack it up in food saver bags and put it in the freezer for later use. Now, I do not blanch my greens before I freeze them. That works perfectly well for us, and we do go through them quickly. They'll be all gone by spring. I try to put as much as I can in the freezer because we use it all winter long like spinach, and I do a spinach pie that my husband absolutely loves. I'll put a little card for that right here so you can see it, and you can find the video that I have for that, just to give the recipe a try. It's really fun. It's really delicious. It's kind of a take on a Greek spinach pie, but my husband loves it, so I have to keep plenty of greens in the house and available to make it. All right, let's get these dried off and in the freezer. And is typical for me, we don't do any waste if we can help it. So we're going to use these stems, at least some of them, to ferment them for pickles. We're going to cut one 2 size so I have room for the weight and the water inside of the jar as well. And then I'm going to use that one to measure the other things that I cut. I do a lot of small batch canning because we are a small family now. There's just a couple of adults, 3 adults really, that live in my household. So I don't do a lot of anything at any one time. But I picked, there were a few peppers, there were a few yard-long beans in purple and green, a couple of string beans that got forgotten the last time I picked. So we're going to pickle all of those together in one jar, and I'm going to do my best to cut them into strips, all roughly the same size, so they will pickle at the same time, and they'll just look prettier for serving. I know I keep saying pickle here. They will be pickles, but I am fermenting them. These are going to be fermented. So I'm going to pack my jar as tightly as possible. That will just help make sure I have a full jar when I'm finished. These purple beans will hold their color pretty well when they're fermented. I love that about them. When you put them in actual pickles like that you water bath can, they lose that. The water will turn a little pinkish, but they will actually turn green when they're cooked. So having them raw in the ferment liquid really helps preserve some of the color, and that's really pretty. And the stems from the Swiss chard also are colorful. I use Bright Light Swiss chard and Ford Hook. So Ford Hook makes a great fermented pickle. Their stems, because they're wider and they're more tender, I believe. The Bright Lights ones can be kind of tough, and any that are tough won't be thrown away. They will be either given to our hens. Sometimes I cook them first, or I will just put them in the compost and they will help feed new plants next year. Now this is my favorite pickling spice. I have learned that you only need 1 tablespoon per quart. Anything more than that is delicious but very, very strong. That pickling spice is listed below under the description. If you just click on my Amazon shop link, you'll see that come right up under. I think it says either kitchen essentials or kitchen spices or something like that. You'll see, I think it's the first thing that comes up anyway. And it's really delicious. One of those containers is about $9. It lasts me the whole season. And I do pickle a lot. All right, so this is just mixing up the brine. I use the same brine for most of my ferments. It is to 1 quart of water, 2 tablespoons of kosher salt or pickling salt. Of course, you can add any flavors you want to your pickles. Once the brine is in and I stir out a little air bubbles, I'm going to put a glass weight on there just to keep everything, especially the spices, under the water. These glass weights are reusable, they're pretty tough, and they're not very expensive. And then I am going to put a 1-way valve top on and a metal ring. That's how I ferment. I love this method. It's not really very messy. It's a 1-way valve, so I don't ever really have any problems with spoilage. That will go on my counter. I have a little area where I keep ferments, and that will be there for maybe a week until it tastes the way I want, and then it will go in the refrigerator. Now I'm going to mix up some more brine, 1 quart of water, 2 tablespoons of salt, because I'm also going to do a couple of quarts of cucumber pickles because they are just out of this world. With this particular pickling spice, again, my favorite one, you can see it there in the background, and this salted water. I do not heat the water up first. I don't see any reason for that. The salt will dissolve with a couple of minutes of stirring. And then all I have to do is wash and prep my cucumbers. In this case, I want them a little bit sweet, so I'm going to add a good amount of extra sugar to that brine you just saw me mix up. But I'm going to put the pickling spices in, a little bit of garlic, a little bit of chopped onion, just a little bit. You can see it's a very small onion there. And then I will cut off the top and bottom of these pickling cucumbers, cut them in either halves or spears, and pack my jars. Again, fill them with brine, adjust the tops, and put them aside for several days to a week or so. I just test them for flavor. When they're at the flavor I want, in the refrigerator they go. And right now I probably have 6 quarts of refrigerator already fermented pickles and vegetables for us to enjoy. It's a great way to do small batch pickling and use up those smaller amounts of produce, especially towards the end of the gardening season, without waste. You can do lots of different flavors. Now, of course, if I was going to put these long term on my shelf downstairs, I would use a vinegar, water, salt combination, and I would water bath can them. But that's not what we're doing here because they will go in the refrigerator when they're done fermenting. And again, I always pack my jars as full as possible. The pickles will soften a little bit, and so there'll be a little room in the jar once they're fermented. And this pickling spice that I'm using does have crushed bay leaves in it. I don't find that they're too soft. When I'm done, they're definitely still holding their crunch in the refrigerator for several weeks. If you try this pickling spice, give me a comment down below. Let me know if you like it, or if you have one that you like even better. I would love to know what kind that is. I'm always up for trying a new one. Again, we're going to add glass weights. I push them down to bring that brine up as close to the top as I can. I want the brine right up at the top to keep the air out. And then my one-way valves. And then just a canning ring to secure those. And then you can push down on that one-way valve a little bit just to make sure there's no air remaining in any gap between the valve and the top of the pickles. But again, using these one-way valves, they're reusable, they're silicone, they wash really easily. I never have any problems with spoilage. And there we go. You can just see the glass at the top, the glass weights, and they're perfectly fine. We'll just put them aside in my little fermenting area, and then I'm going to cover them. It's not very bright over there. There's no window or light really, but we're going to cover them anyway just to help encourage the fermenting process. And my last project for today is going to be putting some bone broth away. Now I'm not going to pressure can this, so this bone broth has been cooking for at least 24 hours, maybe a little bit longer. It's leftover bones from a roasted chicken, and it's leftover cooking liquid from cooking some vegetables for the refrigerator. I cooked 3 or 4 kinds of vegetables. I usually steam them in the same exact water, save the water, and add it to my bone broth. I always use a very fine sieve because I want to get out all of the cooked herbs or any vegetables that I've added in there, because I think if they stay in the broth, it can give the broth an off flavor, and I like a nice rich chicken flavor. I did add a little bit of turmeric to this just because I like to have that in our diet everywhere I can put it. As you can see, this broth is still very, very hot. So I'm going to put it into some glass jars, just put some everyday lids on it, put it on a towel for heat protection, and stick it in the fridge overnight so I can defat it in the morning just in case there's any extra fat in there that I want out. And then I can put it in vacuum saver bags and store it in the freezer until I'm ready to use it. Well, thank you for joining me today for week number 2 in the 3 Rivers Every Bit Counts Challenge. I'll be back in just a couple of days with my next installment so that I can catch back up. And as always, I so appreciate your time, your likes, your comments, your shares, and absolutely your shared experiences. I'll see you in a couple days. Take care.